Great. Okay, so this is a Zoom call between Andrea and, and Seth, and all of our calls, Seth, are all private within our society. Our society is a private society, so it's not shared out of that unless we make the decision to put it out in the public, but that's an important thing. And so, Seth, I ran into you a few weeks ago. I think it was Andrew's show or somewhere where I first saw you. And I immediately had this incredible recognition to what you're saying and who you are, and recognize that you've gone through something that's really vitally important for other human beings. And it's something that I've ascribed to, that I've worked diligently on myself for my entire life. I've done thousands of processes. I've had tons of mentors. I've done all kinds of stuff. And I would say in the last probably 6 months, I took this kind of dive into resetting my nervous system. I took this course with a man named Alex Howard. He's over in England, and it's really about going deep into the emotions, going into the patterns. It's extremely uncomfortable. And I'm doing it again. I actually did it once, and then I recorded it all, and there's some main issues that I wanted to still get into, and I'm diving even deeper. So as I'm talking about this, I share this all with our members. We have a lot of members, and not a lot of always participating. We have over 2,000 people, but probably 300 to 400 who are full-time. And I would say that the majority of them have similar issues, and that's why they've come into our society, because it's really about correcting your status, getting away from the matrix reality of where all the trauma occurred, how we've been enslaved as humans and all that kind of stuff. So people found their way to where we are, and we offer courses to work within the law system and that, but really it's the human factor that's really big. And actually this morning I just got an email from somebody, and they said, you talked about this rewiring course. Do you think it'll be beneficial for me? Because I had such a rotten childhood and I'm so traumatized. And I said, absolutely. But be prepared, So just to give you a little background, I started working with this doctor. His name's Dr. DiCenso. We call him Dr. D. And his whole work is on the nervous system and the vicious cycle syndrome that we create over and over and over again. And his way that he works is through supplementation. He actually sees where you're compressed in your body. He has this process where it's called the MAP. It's the matrix assessment process, and you give your fluids, and he looks at where the body's not functioning properly, and you do a process. And what it does is it brings up a lot of things in the unseen world. It brings up childhood things, and it's pretty phenomenal. And I've been doing that with him for 3 years. I shared your video of the Hawaiian, when you talked to the Hawaiian kids, which I told you is near and dear to my heart because I lived in Hawaii and I know the situation there. And he was just thoroughly amazed at you. Like, he said, this guy could really articulate my work. He says, it's taken me 40 years to get this across, and you articulated it. And so that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today, because, I looked at your website, and in the top right corner, it says, this is close to what I do every day. This is the practice. And I've watched it once, and I don't know if I understand totally what your practice is, but kind of want to go through that with people, for people, I should say, that are going to be watching this, to really look at what it is that we create over and over again, and we involve people in that movie of ourselves,
Yeah.
that we trigger them, they trigger us, then we get in this movie together or with several people. and and we can't seem to get out of this traumatized movie. um, and interesting enough, I just had something come up this morning that just thoroughly triggered me into my own childhood stuff of not feeling good enough, not being heard, not being loved, not being appreciated, all those things, even though I've gone through that 1,000 times. I don't know if it's the sign of the times that we are,
Part of it.
this is like, okay, people, humans, we've been traumatized for eons of time. We've been through everything. We've been, you know, wars, burned at the stake, whatever. Um, but this is the time where we're going to have to really face ourselves, go through it to create who we really are, and to collaborate, and to, because that's the only way that things are going to work. Um, I don't know if you had a chance to look at some of the stuff that we're
I
attempting to do.
did. I read through, I didn't read all of it, but read through what your husband did with natural law and the plan. I don't remember what you called it,
Master,
but I looked
master
through
plan.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
ama- Amazing.
Well, that's still, a lot of it's still here,
Yeah.
and we try to do many, many things, and the human factor comes in a lot because everybody has a different idea of what's right. um,
The issue is everybody thinks they're a human. We prioritize our perception of that being number one, and that's our downfall. We don't realize it from this, cyclical human prison-like perception that most of us ascribe to and believe to be all that is, or the primary bulk of all there is. But we've been doing this for so many years, so many lifetimes, so many generations. It's way bigger and older and going on longer than we could ever imagine. And just realizing that and thinking about it in that way, it's almost like you got to give yourself a pat on the back and say, oh, okay, it's way bigger than I could ever even fathom with my human faculties. So why would I try? You know? And a lot of people do that. They're just like, oh my God, it's this, it's that. And they just get carried away in this whole thing. And that's why I open terms with things in a very practical and down to earth way. Because even though what I'm saying sounds elegant and beautiful and enlightening and all that, it's really very simple. It's actually very, very simple. And the core tenets of this fundamental practice, you could say, that is just choosing to relax, get into a state of heart brain coherence by breathing rhythmically and smiling inwardly, and just learning how to sustain that is kind of number one. That's the first part of it. And that can be done by anybody, even if they don't want to go out into the depths of the universe, or even like if you're just looking to heal your trauma, to get out of these old perceptual, these cyclical perceptual imprisonment perspectives that everybody just keeps focusing their energy on. A simple state of sustained heart brain coherence, when practiced daily for enough time, will eventually become second nature. And but it's committing to it, no, understanding what it is first, but committing to it. You have to, a little bit of my background. I've been as traumatized and as beaten up and as just as suffering as I could be. It got to the point where I could not go on as I was. I was like, literally, tell me why or let me die. Like I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know why it happened. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I existed, but all I could feel was such internal turmoil. And it was everything that I was feeling in that had happened to me, but there was things going on that I didn't know if they were related to me or not, but I could feel so much pain that there was almost like no way out. And I realized at that point that I had, if anything, I had one choice that I could either make or not make. And if I didn't make it, I would have stayed in this stressed out, suffering state of being that would have further eroded my health, my wellness, my optimism, my all that. It would have just brought it right down and essentially brought me into death. Or I could say, all right, I'm here. I don't like what I feel, but what if all this pain and suffering and chaos and disorder and all, what if this is all my greatest teacher? What if it is truly here to help me not just wake up, but wake up and realize what this is at a core level so that I can not only overcome myself and my own trauma and my own health issues and my own ability, my inability to not walk through life and be triggered by everybody and everything. I was like, what, it's like, okay, well, if I accept things as they are and don't do anything about it and feel beat up, I'm a victim. And then I keep repeating these same patterns. And then it's like like a cycle of, you believe something to be a certain way, it lights up a bunch of neurons in your brain that are related to other incidents that have made you feel that certain way. And that's where that story comes in. You just keep reliving all these past traumatic events. Some are connected, some aren't, but they're all connected through the wiring of your entire being. And you're just like, my God, what can I do? It hurts, it's this and that. But I just really simply realized that, okay, if I'm going to trust that where I'm at this station, at this juncture in my life, is for me to wake up and grow and evolve, who would I have to be and what would I have to do? And I just sat back, I relaxed, I started breathing, and then I just became aware of some really simple, self-evident truths that were so empowering. The one was like, okay, and I talked to a lot of people about this and they get it because it's just so obvious. It's like, all right, something is causing our heart to beat, right? And it's not me. There's this innate intelligence in my body that when I think a thought, it's sending bioelectric signals through my entire being faster than the speed of light. And it has nothing to do with who I think I am as a person in this life. So I started like realizing this and kind of smiling and getting kind of giddy about it. Like, okay, there's this profound innate intelligence that is allowing me to perceive reality through these human senses. And it's in my body. My body is housing this miraculous bioelectricity that is way more intelligent than I am. And I just kept thinking that I'm like, it's way more intelligent. And then I'm like, oh no, don't do that to yourself. Don't beat yourself up like that. But my human self kept saying it's way more intelligent. And so the more I allowed that to be way more intelligent than I was, right? Instead of needing to be right, you wrote something in the email that you sent to me that I was like, people would rather, be right and fight the system than be okay with not knowing what this is all for and going inward and making peace, and trusting that. But I just realized like everything around me was fighting me and bringing me down and beating me to the core, and it was going to kill me. But as I realized this innate intelligence was in me, I was like, okay, what happens if I start aligning what intelligence I have with my human consciousness, my human self that I'm mostly aware of, and start really focusing it on this innate intelligence of my body. And so I just did that. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Because if I didn't do that, all the pain and trauma and issues kept coming to the surface, and it hurt and would bring me out of this knowingness that there's something profound taking place within me. And so even if I started going off into those cycles of old past thought for a little bit, I just started getting better at being like, oh, okay, there I went off again, but now I can just bring my attention back. And I kept bringing it back and bringing it back. And I noticed I was breathing really slowly, really rhythmically. I could feel my heart just beating. And I started just smiling because I felt so calm and so good inside. And I started smiling because I was like, oh my God, I love the way this feels. I literally love it, you know? And then something lit up and I was like, oh my God. As soon as I acknowledged that I love it, my awareness of it increased. And I felt literally like, for a moment, I felt more whole than I had in a very long time. And it was that little revelation, that breakthrough where I was like, wow, what I'm doing internally is getting results. It's happening. Even though it was so hard to do in the beginning, but I made that choice. I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm just going to do it and keep focusing. And after a while, you know, a month and a half of doing that every day and focusing on it, I started having these like little revelations, these little like breakthroughs, and they weren't a big deal. You know, I wasn't like, this is God and I'm here doing nothing like that. It was just, like I just said, I felt like, oh my God, I love this. And the fact that I acknowledged that I loved it and knew my body knew what it meant that I loved it in that way caused me to start having faith in this process that I was creating within me. And the reason it caused me to have faith is because I became a little bit less of the person that I believed myself to be. And I became a little bit more of the energy source, the energy form that I truly am. And I just, as I would keep doing this, I realized the internal state of energy, awareness, and perception felt better than anything I had ever done in my life up to that point. And it was allowing me, you know, to like, as I would deepen into this and keep doing it, as thoughts or things from past trauma and wounding would come up, I'd almost like remember, like, oh yeah, this is already like, I already like planned on all this happening. It was like this higher aspect of myself started coming into focus. And then I was like, oh yeah, these things that I get triggered by, that I resist, that I get caught up on, they're actually teaching me how to evolve as a soul. But I'm only going to be able to pick up on these cues if I'm in this relaxed, coherent state. And if I'm not in that state, then those things that are triggering me, and they do the opposite. They bring me into a deeper state of suffering. So every time I would realize, you know, I'd be in these states, I just sustain them and I get into them. And then the past would come up, the trauma, the pain, the whatever, all the things. I would perceive them not in the way that I was used to perceiving them, which would lead me down a rabbit hole or whatever. I would perceive them from this place of wholeness where I love this body. I love that there is something way greater than me that is sparking all of this to happen and go on within me and around me. And I am so grateful and appreciative of that. And because I've spent so much time focusing on it, I've really began to develop a relationship with it that allowed me to trust my ability to continue becoming further in alignment with whatever this source of energy is that's allowing me to perceive reality through my human senses. And so,
Could I just ask you a question right in there? Okay. So the different processes that I've done, um, it has been recommended uh, to really go into your emotions, like really feel it, like really feel, okay, where does it come up in the body? You know, mine's a lot around the solar plexus usually. Where's the, you know, that it's so somatized somewhere in your body, and to really feel it, see if there's memories that come up with it, and really digest it instead of letting them keep being in the body. Um, I don't know if that works or not. I'm just curious on if is that something that you go into, like you know, like as that guy Alex says, well, that emotion is trying to tell you something. It's undigested. It's something that's there. It's, you know, put a name, you know, name on it. If it's, you know, if is it hatred? Is it resentment? Is it what comes up? You know, is that more just of a mind loop when you're just going to keep going and regurgitating those things, or is that something? Have you ever gone into that and just really gone to the depths of your feelings, your emotions, or is that something separate of what you're talking about with this your universal magnificent being coming into your body?
and the only reason that there is any kind of universal magnificent being coming in to me, to anybody, is because it's what we really are. It's
Yeah,
what is really happening. But all of this conditioning that has happened in all these lives, and it's most especially in this life, prevents us from recognizing that for what it is. So here's, yes, I focused on my emotions, I focused on all that stuff, but what I realized when I would do it is it never resolved. It never went away. It almost reinforced it in that I kept revisiting it, kept giving attention to it, and kept becoming aware of it in new ways. But because I was doing that, I was reinforcing more awareness that was focused on whatever I thought it was or whatever I believed that trauma or emotion to be. When in the reality, we have the ability to generate feelings within us. Every single one of us does. We have all these glands and plexus centers and neurons all through us that are holding on to the past and in there. But when we realize that we have the ability to generate feelings that we want to generate, feelings that are coming out of us being in coherence with this energy that is animating our being, that's causing our heart to beat, that's causing our lungs to breathe, regardless of who we think we are, regardless of the emotions that affected us. When we take a quantum leap and we trust that what we are is truly magnificent. Hold on a minute here.
it's, you know, it's really easy to get when you're in that space. You know what I mean? When you're, if you are totally relaxed and you're coherent, and then you feel that, you go, wow, yeah, that's great. um in my opinion, that, you know, or in my experience I should say, it's kind of far and few between. And when, as we're going through these waves, what I call the waves of the apocalypse, you know, we're going, it seems like we're going deeper and deeper into these waves of whatever's universally going on.
Yeah.
It seems to really bring up even deeper pain. um, so I don't know how you address that.
So at some point, you come to a place where, like I said to you, like I told you, my own pain and suffering was so great that I had no choice but to focus on this, and not just focus on it, sustain it. Because if I let my guard down a little bit, all those things that were causing me to suffer would keep coming back. And then I'd feel like, oh, really? Do I got to really work at sustaining this full time? And it was like, yes. And for a second, I'd feel victimized and I'd feel like, oh my God, that's so much work. Like, who wants to, you know? But it was, but at the same time, I had gone far enough at that point and worked on it enough that this other part of me, this greater part of me was like, you can do this. And not only can you do this, but when you do it, you are going to be so grateful by what happens, by what you find. And I was like, okay. And so I just kept doing it. And eventually what happened was I started becoming so coherent. And I can break all this stuff down too to make it more simple for everybody to understand. But I started getting to a place where I had developed so much coherence between my heart and my brain and the rest of the organs in my body that this energy that was causing my heart to beat was syncopated throughout the rest of my organs in my body, which allowed the energy field that we all truly are, that I truly am, that's causing my heart to beat, to start returning to a space of wholeness. And the more it does that, the pain and trauma of our past that we're holding on to, that's been wired into the organs and places of our body, it doesn't, it can't stay in there as long as you are, I am staying committed. I'm going to do this work no matter what. I'm going to choose to smile inwardly. I'm going to love that this is happening. I'm just going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, even if it means doing it forever. It's that level of commitment. And it sounds like, who's going to do that, when the reality is everybody's being called to actually do that. And the other reality is, we don't get a get out of jail free pass card by any of this. Everybody faces what they are eventually. So the rational thing is, why not face it now? Why not face it now? Even if you don't like the parts of you that resist it and are hard, face it. And that's what happened to me. So in that facing it, overcoming it, feeling how all my own pain and trauma that was there would literally release from the parts of my body that it had accumulated, and then feeling those parts of my body, now they're clear of that, they're so in coherence with this heart and the brain and the energy field that's there, then suddenly they start to activate. They literally start to activate. And I'm in such a state of calm, and my emotions and feelings are so elevated and uplifted. And I'm feeling the pulse, my pulse in all of these parts of my body. I could feel it anywhere that I focus. I couldn't feel that before. You know, when I was in a state of pain and suffering, couldn't feel that. But suddenly I could feel my pulse. I could feel my heart beating everywhere. And when I began focusing on the feeling of that pulse in all these different glands, you know, there's glands and plexus centers and everything, I just started focusing on all of them from that place. I noticed that when I was in a highly connected, coherent space, and I'm focusing on all these glands with, oh, I love you, I'm amazing, the process of focusing on them from this state of coherent being caused that energy center or space to become amplified, in that my conscious awareness of it as a human, feeling that pulse, which is divine, you could say, created an amplification of that energy in whatever part of the body I was focusing on. And it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And suddenly I'm realizing that I have the ability to generate thoughts, feelings, emotions from this more connected space that are in alignment with, it's like this. In the physical universe, there's more coherence than there is disorder or chaos. Now, you know, in birth, like when there's pain, right? There is disorder, it has its place, but it's held within a greater container, coherent container. So we as a species are kind of reversed. We're stuck in the chaos. We're focused on, you know, the particle, not the wave in quantum physics. We're focused on this little tiny part of it, that, and that's all. But because everybody around us is doing it and have been doing it for countless generations, we've literally constructed a illusory human projection that has solidified into a temporary illusory reality that we have given more value to and more credence to than what is actually real. So back to what I'm doing, and I'll let you speak for a second, but I want to say, as I kept doing this, and again, remember, like for me, in my perspective, I didn't have a choice. I had gotten to a point in my own human life when there was so much pain and suffering that this was it. I could only go ahead into this. If I didn't, then that stuff would start coming back in and it would get me. And I knew better. I was like, I know I can do better and I have to, because I didn't like that pain at all. But I know I loved what was happening when I was doing this. So I was like, okay, it's calling me to do this. But as that continued to happen, I started becoming more energy than human, than material. And as I became that, the world around me started to literally disappear, right? My perception of the world began to disappear. The more incoherence my conscious awareness is with the coherence of all these organs in the body working in synchrony together. And when that started happening, it's just like, oh my God, like none of what we think is real, none of what we give our attention to and invest our attention into has any value.
It's not worth the attention that we give it. It really
But
isn't.
but this is just part of the but again, honoring that and realizing that, okay, this is what we have to go through. It's just part of the process. But to not forget that we can do this. Like we can do it. Like truly we can do this, because if we don't do it now, we eventually have to do it anyway, you know? So look's happening in our world right now. It's, you know, every single system that has gotten us to where we think we are is all crumbling or collapsing or falling apart all at the same time. You know, and everyone's like, oh my God. But what people don't realize is that it's already been doing this. It's already been, we're collapsing this reality. We're collapsing the illusion of this reality because there's enough of us who have been doing this behind the scenes, inside, internally, that this illusory thing that has been projected out by so many for so long is being consumed by those who are rising above the conditioning of their past. And chaos, I mean, coherence entrains incoherence. So chaos and disorder is a lower frequency compared to a higher coherent frequency that we in these divine antenna-like bodies that we're in have the ability to raise the frequency of it so high that none of this means anything anymore. Because now you're starting to feel like, wow, like you cry, you want to, like, it's like you just, everything that you were born into this world like needing to know and feel about yourself and others, and it's all there. And it's all coming through. And you're embodying these higher virtues of yourself, and it is healing everything that was preventing you from realizing it.
Well, I just want to qualify one thing there, that it's not that it doesn't mean anything, because there are billions of people suffering, starving, in war, homeless, you know. So, you know, a lot of the new age kind of stuff is, well, this is all an illusion, so I'll just ascend and see you later.
Yeah.
We're here to be of service to humanity. That's what our function is that by activating what you're doing, and hopefully everybody's going to be doing, is that changes the physical reality, that those things that were, you know, like I want to get my mansion on the hill with my Corvette or whatever. This, it has no, it's no, not valid. But like what we're doing in Sierra Leone, it's about life. You know, we're there to we're not there to take over the country or try to force them to do it our way. We're there to help them, to uplift themselves, and we're going to give it to them. Here, this is some of the stuff we've learned, because they live in abject poverty and they don't even have roads or water systems and the basic things. So, um, that to me is, from in my process where I am at right now, that's way more important, to honor life than to try to attain material stuff.
Or
So
even like you said, to escape it. A lot of people have
yeah.
this idea of like, oh, this feels so good, I'm gonna escape and go into it. But here's what I've noticed and put to the test, because when it first started happening, I was in shock. Not in shock, I was like, of course anything's possible. But when I began realizing how by doing this internal work, it was affecting the world around me, that's when it really became like, oh my God. And this happened when I was incarcerated. I was physically incarcerated for selling marijuana. And that's a brutal prison environment. I was being physically incarcerated for me to realize I had been in a mental and emotional and perceptual prison for decades and lifetimes before. But as a result of going
You
through,
had to put yourself there to
I had
really
to, it
fix
was
the,
perfect. It was the
yeah.
greatest thing ever. And so when I started getting into these states and sustaining them and feeling what it felt like in and around my being, this wholeness that we're talking about, which the energy that's animating your heart returns to you, or it just becomes more apparent to you. The more you wipe away the cobwebs of your past, then you're able to rise up to see that it was always there to begin with. And in doing that, you literally affect the world around you, and in a profound way. Like, again, I was in prison and people are yelling and screaming and fighting and all this stuff. But because I had gotten into these states and sustained them and just been in them, I had decided long ago that I'm not going to let anything externally take me out of that, because it felt so good and there was nothing that was worth distracting me, nothing in that environment that was worth me giving my attention to distract it. So I had fully made up my mind that being in this internal state was more valuable than giving my attention to anything external. And a lot of people might be like, oh, that's escapism, that's this and that. And maybe it was at that point. Maybe it was. Maybe I had to escape for a little while. But here's
Mhm.
what happened as a result of me being so aligned and committed and being able to sustain that state of being. It got to a point where it was so strong, this field in and around me, and I can turn it on at will and be in it, that all of these men, vicious men, brutal, predatory men that it's prison. Like, they're not, there was some good people, but there's a lot of people who are not really good guys. And they would just be like, you'd see them, I would look around from that place and I'd see these guys just being like, and then finally one of them came over to me and he's like, yo, man, he's like, what is this? What's happening? He didn't know what, and I was like, oh my God, he feels it. He like literally feels it. And this is a brutal person. He's a very mean person. But he's smiling and he's like, and I'm looking at him and all I see is a little kid who had been traumatized, who had been hurt so badly that he had carried all this pain of his past with him to this point that he was now here in this place doing what he does. And when
And the sins of the father too, because his father put that on him and his grandfather put it on his father, and it's been carried down for thousands of generations, right?
thousands, if not millions or more,
Yeah.
it's unfathomable. It's so deep, but it almost doesn't matter, because we focus on what matters, what is truly not valuable, what is truly priceless. And the more that is cultivated within, the more we release our own past and conditioning, and the more we sanctify the tissues of our body, the our perception of self and reality becomes sanctified. And the natural result of that is we bring this energy into the world, and thus it activates and others and helps sanctify this world by getting people to, because an internal state of coherence allows your body to be in coherence with the planet. And the planet is in coherence with the solar system, which is in coherence with the galaxy, which is in coherence with the universe, and on and on and on. And that goes all the way down to a microscopic level. This pattern, these greater universal cyclical patterns, are repeating themselves through all of us at all times, no matter what we perceive. But we've been put in a situation where we've taken a temporary detour because the process of being born isn't always a comfortable one. And the way that the universe, you could say, or God, or whatever you want to call it, one way, I would never proclaim to know it or what, but one way that it is evolving is through us, because we are not actually separate from it. So the way we do this, the way we conduct ourselves, the virtues we embody, the way we treat others, most of us don't know how to do any of that in any kind of elevated way.
You shall know someone by their acts and deeds. I'm not religious in any way, but that's what's true, right?
Yes.
Just want to get to one point before I forget that is, in my opinion, when people have certain beliefs, like that's what stops that flows, because if they have a belief that there's this wrathful God and that's watching them, and if they do something wrong, they're going to be punished, or whatever, take whatever flavor of belief systems. That's what cuts that flow, because if you're believing in whatever that you're not, that the universe doesn't support you. I mean, basically, I'd say most of humanity is they think, well, they're in karmic retribution. They don't deserve a good life, whatever the flavor, whatever religion, whatever belief system. So maybe you can talk about that, because we tend to go around in all these circles. We've had this society for a long time. We've had many chat rooms, and then all of a sudden somebody will throw up some belief system,
Yeah.
and we try to dissect it, but some people don't want to let go of that, because that's comfortable to them. That's their reality. That's
No.
their focus. Yeah, that's what's known. So maybe you can address that.
So here's something to consider. All human cognition, the greatest, from the greatest to the worst, you could say, to judge this, to polarize it, minds who have ever lived. Okay, let's focus on the greatest minds who have ever lived, who have figured out technological or spiritual or innovations that just so far supersede what the masses were able to come up with. Einstein, Schopenhauer, whatever, like any name of people that they look up to. All of the greatest human cognition that has ever existed on this planet, in our perception of this reality and countless others, melts away into nothingness. The more that we, as the people we believe ourselves to be, start to dissipate those belief systems in the light of this coherent energy that is trying to connect to us, through us, trying to get us to become consciously aware that that is what it is doing, in synchrony, in harmony with us. The more we connect to all that and be with it, we rise above all thoughts, all beliefs,
Mm.
all ideas. None of them have any validity. I know that sounds so hard to hear to people. That challenges everything that they think or know. But none of it
I
has
go,
any
thank
validity.
goodness.
Yeah, none
Really?
of it has
Yeah.
any validity compared to what they, meaning you, me, every single one of us, to what we truly are. And all those things that we believe are just one brick at a time that we put up into this perceptual prison to keep reinforcing ourselves. Like, okay, yeah, I'm focusing on this. I believe this. That's one more brick in the wall of your own the construction of your own perceptual prison. There is no us in them. The government isn't doing this to us. We are them and they are us. People hate this. Like, they're outraged by this. But what if it's true? What if the worst things that we see happening on this planet that cause us to say, you know what, I'm going to fight this, let's do it. What if we're feeding it? What if we're just making that worse? And let's take even more of a leap forward. What if these things that hurt us, that we don't want to look at, that are these great atrocities, what if they are the result of a species that has evolved for countless generations out of sync with nature, out of sync with their own inner nature, that we have made it to be like this, all of us, to the degree that now it looks so ugly and it's so intense and it's doing all this because it is us. We are that. And we have constructed all of this so that we can either choose to overcome it, become greater than it, which will actually cause it to dissolve and disappear because it's not actually what it appears to be. Or we can say, we can be beneath it. We can let it have power over us. We can be afraid of it. And then we're further fueling the example that it is leading by. We're further fueling this temporary, illusory aspect that we are allowing to dominate us. I'm telling you right now, there is nobody doing this to us. We are doing it to ourselves. And the more, and people hate hearing that too, they just, because it places all of the responsibility back into our laps as individuals. But okay, and don't shoot the messenger, you can if you want, but I'm here to tell everybody, as every bit of the person you believe yourself to be dissipates into the actual energy field of what you were before you were born and what you will become as you leave this body, as this awareness literally starts to integrate back into that which it came from, every bit of your human cognition will light up. You will remember why you incarnated, why all this happened, and you will also remember that you forgot all of this and that you didn't take responsibility for it. And the beautiful thing is, guess what? It's not going to punish you. It doesn't want to judge you because you did that. You see it all. It's like essentially, it's like, I love you because you are me. I am you. Like and you're like, oh my God, I remember, but then you die. It's too late. And then you're like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to do it again. You have this whole thing. And same thing, you forget. And this has been going on for so long, but it's coming to a point now where enough of us have gone through this enough times and we're incarnating and we're remembering. We're remembering even.
Dr. D's got this. He has a lot of different sayings, but one of them is, you are the biological end product of your interpretation of your perceptions.
Love that. I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So you create this form by, all the toxins you got in your body, by everything you suppressed and all the hatred and whatever you've done, and it carries through several lifetimes, millions of lifetimes. So, yeah. So I guess for people who are maybe kind of new to stuff like this, and one of the things that I've learned from Dr. D was to have a morning discipline that doing this in the morning, where you're meditating or just being with yourself or contemplating, however it is, or for me, I do heart math. I do,
Yes.
so I'm doing the coherence.
Do you do the thing with the app, the inner wave?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I can't make a better, to me, these simple states of heart brain coherence, when habituated and sustained, are sometimes it's all anybody needs. Like just that alone, that might be all as far as somebody wants to go. And that is light years ahead of 99.99999% of where people are at. But those simple states of heart brain coherence that you can see with that heart rate monitor,
And then
and for me, like
it
when,
things, it tells you when you're in the coherence, and that entrains you to know, okay, then my field's out here, my heart's out here, I'm calm. Because what I found is that when you're sort of having that electric feeling, when you're not calm, that's where, that's when you're creating that reality of, the redundant, traumatic sort of thing. You're in that, you can feel, I can feel it so much when I'm in a pattern and it's doing that thing. It shows up in the heart math that I don't get coherence. It's, if I've got something in my mind that they did something to me, or I can't do that, or whatever, the coherence. As soon as that you're in coherence, then you don't have that, what I call the virtual reality projection unit, because that's what we do. We're projecting, our inner turmoil onto the world, and then we get into the tussles with it, and you know that's why we have there are no enemies, only opportunities, because you know your enemy is yourself when you're fighting that, right? And
that's
um,
yeah.
so for me, what and I definitely am still in that process of trying to perfect things, and I go through those different layers and stuff. But I find the helpful thing is really to start in the morning, do a meditation, do the heart math, deep breathing. If I would probably incorporate some more of what you're saying to bring the universal thing and transcend things through the organs and
Yeah, that's all
etc.
later. And believe it or not, all that happens, it'll start to happen intuitively as a result of really ingraining that heart brain coherent state. And it's super simple, actually. Even if somebody doesn't want to buy the app, all it really is just breathing in and out rhythmically, slowly and rhythmically, while smiling inwardly, or feeling some kind of emotion, some love, or like, that's all it is. And just doing it, like being aware, okay, things are going to come up and things are going to, you'll think of things of the past, but you are so committed to this that you're like, okay, well, that comes up. Sorry, I'm going to get back into this. And you just keep getting yourself back into it. And as long as you're committed enough to do that and you keep doing it, then eventually you start to create new neural networks and new neural pathways in your body that are more congruent with your choice and the feelings that you feel as a result of doing this internal work, until it starts to become predominant, more predominant. And, I don't know about you, but when I first started doing all this, I realized, like, I knew when I was out of coherence and when I wasn't. And then it simply became like, oh, okay, wow, I just allowed this to trigger me or that to happen. And then I'm like, I don't have to make that choice anymore. I can choose to calm down, to breathe rhythmically, and face everything from that place. And talk about being empowered. Talk about watching you have an external effect, what the internal world having an external effect around you. It starts to become so normal and so empowering that you keep wanting to be more devoted to cultivating these internal states. you know, in the beginning, it's harder for people to do because we've been taught to value all these things outside of us, not to value these internal states of being inside of us. But as we find out, you know, in the external world around us, the things that we think have the most value that we strive to attain and get, once we get them, we're happy and good for a little bit, but then suddenly they don't have the same value. Now, that doesn't mean to not be abundant. It's a reprioritization of values, because when you are, because you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the biggest house, and you can have all everything, but if you are not in a state of internal peace and connection with the natural rhythms of the earth and the universe, you're you're not going to be happy in the long term. You're not going to, or let's not even use the word happy. You're going to eventually feel disconnected from reality. And so learning to value the way your internal self feels when it's in alignment with reality becomes more valuable, more, I mean, to the degree where it's priceless, it's infinitely priceless. That becomes so much more important to you than the attainment of anything else. In fact, for me, like, I just, I didn't care about anything else around me. It's not that I didn't care about it, it's that I was in an ascending love affair with my own spirit. You know, we like the, hence we fall in love and all this. This is different. This is, it's an ascension process, but not an escapism. You are rising above the conditions of this reality to meet the actual reality that you truly are, that has always truly been. You're meeting it halfway by your willingness to meet with it. And then as a result of you doing that, it begins to integrate itself back into your human cognition, your human perception, your human senses. And you are automatically living in alignment with that. And so you naturally seek to express that in this world, because that's what brings, it makes it more sacred. It sanctifies it. And you can see it come out of everybody. You can see it in everybody. And when you're so focused on it in yourself, when you see it in others, they can't help but see it in themselves too, whether they did or not.
That's
And that,
fantastic.
yes, yes.
So what about your inter relationships, personal relationships? Just, you know, the people that are closest, like maybe your parents, your children, your relatives, the people that, you know, brought up those the ones that poke at the patterns. Are you finding like your expression of yourself, how you communicate with them? Because that, you know, one of the things that where we're moving to is that we want to have um, land-based communities and claim the land and be free from the matrix and the, you know, because Ken, my husband, he's developed a whole land claim process where you have your own jurisdiction. So people are going to move on to these land communities.
Beautiful.
And I guess some of my trepidation is really how are people going to relate to each other, because they have all these really bad habits of dominating somebody, or passive aggressiveness, or, you know, everybody's got their flavor of how they, some people suppress themselves a lot, you know. One of the main things when your electric system is lit up is the fight or flight. You know, it's like, well, fuck you, I'm out of here. You know, when anybody, this happens all the time, and any on our chats and stuff, if we sort of confront somebody on a certain thing, then they go, "That's it, I'm out of here," and then we don't see them.
Yeah.
Or maybe a year later they come back, or because they have such an internal fight or flight thing. What I hear what you're saying is that when you're around people, that's changing them, even the brutal prisoners and stuff. But you know, that's a process in itself. Like, how do you relate to somebody who's really in their patterns and they're doing their thing? Do you just leave them alone? Do you just go over and beam and talk to them, or it's a case by case thing? are you can you assist people in how to, because humans really don't know how to communicate well with each other. You know, we have a really difficult time, or we assume that people understand us. If we say a certain thing, we think, oh, you should know what I'm talking about, but they might be from another culture, country, different way of being grown up. So can you say anything about that?
Absolutely, I can say a lot on it. So, as I said before, all these systems of the world that have gotten us to where we are as a civilization, as a Western based, mechanized type of industrialized global society that we've become, every single one of those systems is crumbling and falling apart. You know, we call all that the matrix, right? You know, the governing model, the journalistic model, the business model, the environmental model, all like they're all crumbling or falling apart, whatever, and they're part of the matrix. But the real model, the real system that is most imperative to crumble and restructure is the human perceptual faculty. That is what truly keeps us tied to a matrix, like a matrix-esque state of being. And we can change all we want, the things around us, but until we have addressed the root cause of what all of this comes from and what allows it to look and be the way it appears to be, till we have gone inside and resolved that by dissipating the deeper aspects of division, of polarization, of all these things that we do. We heal them, they come together. But for most, it happens beyond human cognition. So, but it happens very intuitively, hence the need for getting into these states and sustaining them. These deeper principles of consciousness itself, the energetics of them, when we consciously choose to align ourselves with them, have a way of working themselves out on our own. We are just being called to meet it halfway. And if we do that, it's like as much as we focus on this energy is as much as it focuses on us, until eventually enough of a saturation point, you could say, is reached where the barriers between who we think we are and what this universal coherent force actually is have met and communicated enough times that there's no more barrier. It starts to go away. The beautiful thing is you remain, but not as you were before. It's you open, aware of everything, feeling everything, and you're in love. You're in the greatest love affair that you never could even imagine. And so you seek to bring more of that in the world around you. Now, it's interesting. A lot of my family and friends and the people that I've grown up with, they either they never knew what to think of me. They always like struggled with it and they had all this stuff. But the ones who have tried to come close and really try to figure this out, and like they either get so triggered that they can't handle it and they walk away, or they stick with it a little bit and they start going deeper with me and realizing it. And then they I help them see it and they catch their triggers. They're like, and then I'm like, you see what that actually is? And they're like, oh my God, it's that is the past. That's I don't and I watch them overcome those aspects of themselves. Now, it's funny, my parents, my whole life, I mean, they love me, but they've never known what to think of me. But this state of being that I'm giving voice to has increased so much in me and around me and in my life that it's become undeniable for everybody around. And to the degree where even though a lot of people will be resisting a lot of elements because they haven't committed to this to the degree that they could, you know, there's still going to be their masteries are still coming out. They're still becoming aware. Like my parents admitted, even though they have all this resistance and stuff, that they have these gifts. I mean, just a few weeks ago, my mother revealed to me that she's always had these psychic gifts and everything, and has never ever in my entire life talked about them before, and then showed it to me. and like did it. And I was like,
Wow.
and then she completely stopped and shut off. We're like, what? That didn't happen. There wasn't, because we are so conditioned to focus on everything else but what really matters. And so we give all this attention and all this value to all these things that seem like they matter when, you know, everybody's got it backwards temporarily, you know, and what really matters is coming from the inside out.
Well,
So
it's a conundrum because everybody's kind of in that small thing. So it's all what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? You owe me. I want mine. You know, that survival. It's so intense, and yet it is all about you, but on the greater you, not the little you that's trying to manipulate circumstances so you can get what you want. And that's what we're trained to do right from the beginning. You know, in school, all the indoctrination of competition and I'm better than you and I'm going to get mine and you know, all those things that we're trained to do. We've got to let those go, come into the greater being, which is what's best for everyone. You know, how can I exist on this planet and be so interested in what I need when there's billions of people who live under $1 a day and are just barely eking it out? Like, that's so incongruent with what's supposed to be happening on this planet. You know, everyone should have a life. Everyone should have a joyful, happy, abundant life. And you know, that's sort of where I always go and focus on, and it's amazing to me how many people resist that. And there's like, well, that's their karma. They created that. And I say no, it's because of what we've done, you know, as a collective. Focusing on the little self, what am I going to get out of it? I need mine. That's created that whole environment of why the 99% or you know why 84 people on the planet own half the planet. You know, it's got to shift inside of our own being.
it's simple, really. We've been taught to focus on external things from a selfish perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
What we're saying is focus on your selflessness internally, right? But do that. Like, make this all about yourself until you become selfless. That's the difference here. Instead of focusing on your selfish wants and needs and desires according to the way the world has conditioned us, that we need external things to make us feel a certain way, we're saying, no, I'm done believing in that. I believe that there's something greater. There's something more. I might not know what it is, but I believe it's there. And in the beginning, these types of beliefs can be very helpful to light a fire under someone's butt and get them really like amped up to commit to this and do this work. And if you can find it in you to make a decision to commit to this process with just like, I'm going to do this and this is it, it eventually gets you to a place where you watch how you're supported to keep going further and further with your own internal cultivation of this state. And people, places, situations, things will meet you. Things from the external world will come out of this internal space to meet you and help you, because this is why we're imbalanced. It wants us to create balance. It wants us to be in harmony with our bodies, with each other, with nature. It wants that. But we have to want that now. And we're all wanting all these other things that we think are normal. And it's a reprioritization of values. So, what's in this for me? Everything. What's in it for you? Everything. Infinity times infinity, if that means anything. The best feeling you have ever felt multiplied by infinity. Now that sounds crazy, but
that's
it
the rest, that's the way the
honestly,
rest of the universe works. It works that way. And we've got into this crucible, we've got into this little reality. I feel like we're
yes,
inside of a something. I don't know what we're inside of, but we just can't seem to see how it all works, and how we don't need to keep just thinking about ourselves trying to survive. And what's happening now is that it's also whacked out and crazy that people can't figure out what the hell's going on, because everybody's saying a different thing. Like, well, COVID's this, and this, but no,
yeah,
it's this, and so and so is this. And, nobody can figure out what's going on, and the
yeah,
only way out is to go in, right? That's
yeah.
the only.
It's perfect. We've left no, like, none of it makes sense to anybody. Like, you can look at it, people like, oh, you think it's the transhumanism agenda, you think it's Agenda 21. Like, I think it's all of them. It's all of them and a trillion more. But does that matter? Does it actually matter compared to your reaction to it, your resistance to it? When I was in prison, I hated that place when I got
I
there.
can imagine.
I like, I don't hate, I don't have it, but I hated it. And in the midst of being in my own crucible, right, and alchemizing all of this, and I realized, I was like, okay, if this is all happening for a greater reason, and I can't see it in this stuck, victimized state of being that I'm in, what would I have to do to be able to see it? And one of the things was like, I'm gonna have to embrace this place. I'm gonna have to actually, like, I don't have to like it, but I do have to love it. And I'm like, oh, like, whoa, how am I gonna? But eventually I was able to. I was like, easy. It gets easy to do these things the more you do them. Now, the opposite's also true. Like, we've gotten ourselves into quite a little mess here, it seems like, but it only seems like that. This work, this state of being is more in alignment with reality as it actually is than anything that our civilization or any other civilization in any star system, if you believe in that or not, has ever accomplished or accumulated ever. It truly, this state of being transcends all of that. Now, people are like, right, like, yeah, right. But when we, and again, like, we don't have to take it that far. We're not like, no one, not everybody needs to take it that far. But by really reestablishing a new set point for heart, brain, whole body, whole soul coherence within us, which everybody can do by focusing on this and prioritizing it. And then coming together, when people come together, when they're in coherence like that, we're going to create greater coherence. Because that, in the beginning, it is a little bit of a challenge, because you have to overcome every part of yourself, or enough of yourself, that's in resistance to this. And it's taken a long time to get this way, but you
Hold
can
on.
overcome it. You will overcome it if you keep doing this. And when you do overcome it, you will be so grateful that you chose to incarnate into this, or that you're chosen to incarnate. You will be so grateful for every hair on your head, every negative thought you've ever had, all of it is so perfectly aligned to be exactly the medicine that we need, that ultimately can lead to our healing. But for most of us, it doesn't. But that's changing, and it's changing.
Well, one of the things that Ken coined a phrase is that we took on the clothing of the realm, that we came here and, you took on the prison realm.
Yeah, yeah,
um, we all took on different dysfunctional, we took on sort of the law, money, um, that super dysfunction thing. And then you live through it. You process it through your body, your spirit. You experience every part of it, so you can understand, how did we get here? Like, how did that thing get to here, get to here, get to here, that we're so compressed into this thing that is totally unworkable. like, and it's killing us, and yet, and we go, it's killing us, but we don't stop doing it, you know? So we're at the real crucible part now, where it's really, you really need to choose, where are you going to go with this? And it is frightening to me sometimes. Like, I just went to the park this morning and everybody still has their masks on, and you want to yell at them, take them things off,
Yeah.
you know, but they believe it. And, you know, some of them walk around me like I'm going to give it to them or whatever. So yeah, it's, you know, that's the other thing, is of not getting entangled or righteous or polarized with how other people are interpreting what this thing is that's going on.
It's so challenging for so many to do, because everybody believes that all they are is a person having a human experience. Everybody believes that. So that's such a, like, it, we've just ingrained it into our being so definitively that we can't even imagine what's beyond it. And so we have to realize that we are not, there's a common phrase, I've seen it, we're not, and it's funny, as we're talking right now, this beautiful hawk literally just landed in the tree
Yeah,
outside next to
I had
my
a hawk fly in
window.
front of me today, right in front of me and right up on the branch. And I hadn't seen a hawk for a long time. That's
Oh,
funny.
beautiful. It's just sitting there, like letting you look at him. It's, oh my God. So
Yeah.
there's a quote or a phrase. It's like, we're not human beings having spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And there's so much truth to that, but it's not philosophical. It's not a philosophy. The way people would think about that, a lot will be like, yeah, that's true, you know, but they're not experiencing that. Fundamentally, you know, philosophically, they understand that to be the case, but it's taking that information and applying it until some sort of transformation comes into effect, where we're actually having the experience of what that means. And just for, you know, if anybody is listening and we show this to anybody or whatever, this is not about denying your humanness at all. It's the exact opposite. It's about embodying the potential of what our humanity can be, and then allowing that to integrate into our human perception to create a greater expression. Oh, look, it just flew off. How beautiful. God, to create a greater expression of what is possible. That's what it is. It's to become truly human, truly human. Like, you know, like everybody lives in a state of fight or flight. They're all in like a low to mid to high grade state of constant upset or stress. And they think that's normal,
And they're
but
addicted to it too.
they're
It's like,
addicted to it.
if you
But the
don't have it,
beauty,
then I got to go out and do something that'll stress me
we
so I
create
can
it,
feel like I'm real or something.
but we know, okay, just rationally, that's crazy, that we can't do that. But the more coherent you become, the more you connect to that, the more you start tapping into states of being that you felt when you were a child. Now, you know, like this child-esque wonder of joy and awe. Now, some people have been abused so brutally as children that, you know, they didn't get a lot of time to feel that. But most people remember being a little kid and being like, ah. And so these coherent states help you return to that part of you that is still innocent, that can see that, wow, this is a playground, this is a wonderland. And the more you incorporate the feeling of that possibility into your now adult human senses and perpetuate it, sustain it, embody it, express it, but prioritize it. Keep getting into this place where you're prioritizing that. It will become who and what you are. You know, everybody's focused on who they are, who they think they are, oblivious to what they actually are. But when you start coming to terms with what you actually are, an energy field, a formless energy field, animating a temporary human form, and you are having that experience, not intellectually or philosophically. You're actually having the experience and feeling what it's like to have all the glands and parts of your body all connected all at the same time, and being able to receive and transmit massive amounts of universal information instantaneously with ease, because that is more of what's actually going on than anything else. Then you start getting to a point where you're like, to not do that is crazy. And you laugh at it. You're like, we can do this because this is all there is. But sometimes we have to have an example. We have to have somebody or something to say, just keep doing this and doing this. But I've seen enough people who've been inspired by this, and I tell them really clearly, like, I'm not a guru. I'm not a spiritual teacher. I'm not all of this. All that I am hoping is going to happen is that you're going to realize that all I'm doing is communicating from the part of myself to the part of you that is aware that all these possibilities could actually be a reality, and helping you activate them so that you naturally dissipate all the things that prevent them from being active. And then when that happens and you do start coming into alignment with it, you'll never need to listen to me or anybody else ever again, unless you want to, but you won't need to, because you're going to have your own connection. And that's where the beauty, that's where the awe, that's where the magnificence comes in. Because even though there's a unified field of conscious energy pulsing through all of us and connecting everything, we as individuals have our own unique interpretation and expression of it. And the more we're in alignment with it, the more our ability to express it in a way that is entirely unique and our own becomes our gift from the universe to the world. And I'm watching it happen. I'm seeing it. I watch guys in prison who are knocking people out. I see them out there now. They got out, they're like doing they're working at the level that they can, because even though they don't understand this at really deep levels, it touched them so deeply that they changed as a result of it. They are becoming beacons of light in exactly the way that they have the potential to. It's so humbling and it's so beautiful, and we all can do it. And in fact, we're all going to do it, because I feel like it's already been done. But now we just have to catch up to the part of ourselves that remembers that it's already done.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. So that's fantastic. I'm glad that you went through that pathway, man. That's pretty intense. And and each of us in our own way do something, like how we've created PanTerra. It's really been a real challenge. Just blocked on every single level you can possibly imagine. You have to just have the fortitude to just keep going with it, because it's so out of the norm of dysfunctionality. So kudos to you, and thank you so much for
For reaching out to me with that beautiful letter and email. And I'm sure you feel enough now, like what I'm here to do and where I'm coming from. This is all that matters to me. I've given my life to this. My life doesn't work in any other way.
Yeah.
I can only, not to say I'm not, I still trip up. I still have things that come up, and I fumble, but I have done this so much. I've practiced it so much that I have learned to look at all of the things that could create fear or resistance in me as gifts that are furthering my spiritual or my soul's evolutionary growth through my human form. And so I get knocked out just for a second, but then I'm like, oh, thank you, my God. And I get right back in, and that layer goes and a whole new dimension opens up. And this has been going on forever in all of us, actually. and in ways that we will eventually come to remember and recognize, and the beauty is we can remember and recognize them here now in this form and bring it into this world.
So one person asked me to ask you about tourmalines because they say you're working with the tourmaline. You know that our university is called GEMSTONE
Yeah.
University. Ken and I were in the gem business, so we went deeply into that. We actually have a couple of friends who their whole thing was tourmaline, like what their company's EF Watermelon, which watermelon tourmaline, and that's what they've been into. So we're very akin to the mineral kingdom of the planet, and it's we have lots of crystals and those kind of things and geodes, and so I've heard that you're running you're bottling water over the tourmaline.
Yeah.
And how is that going? Are people getting activated by the tourmaline
They
energy?
are, absolutely. I mean, when I was in prison and I connected to all this and realized that I tapped into this state of purity, I was like, okay, I'm going to create structures in the world that reflect this internal state. And a little spring in the middle of the woods, it's bubbling to the surface of its own accord and running down the hill. Like, it was just a perfect example at that time for where I was at. Now things are going way beyond all of that because this shift, this frequency is becoming palpable and tangible all around. But Maine, the state of Maine gem is tourmaline.
I know.
And ever since I was a little kid, I always had a knack, like whether you call it dowsing or whatever, I just was able to find gemstones and crystals out in the woods. And as I got older, I started really, really tapping into this to the degree where I once had a dream of a big giant amethyst pocket in the woods. I literally dreamt about it. And then I woke up the next morning, the dream was just burning in my mind's eye. And I was like, I gotta go see this. I went up, hiked up into the woods, and I was like, whoa, this is where I had the dream. This is it. Started digging, seeing little quartz crystals right away, like first few digs into it. Then they started turning purple, and I just kept digging more and more, and thousands of crystals came out of that.
Wow.
It took me 2 years. And then I started being able to sense where they were, pockets of them in rock. And all, guys are up here mining. They're like, yeah, right. And I told them, I said, there's a pocket right there. And they drilled into it. Sure enough, boom, a big pocket opened up. All these big smoky quartz crystals, gem with lepidolite, all hot bubblegum pink lepidolite all over them. There was a fist-sized pink and green morganite crystal in it.
Mhm.
And then a bunch of like teal and purple, bicolored teal and purple tourmaline crystals that all look like they were separate crystals, but that actually all fit together to make one big crystal. And I did this a lot. I was right into this. I would do it all the time. But then I got to a point where I've gotten so sensitive now that I just stopped doing it because I can't bring myself to dig in the earth or drill into it, or it's just not in my heart to do that right now.
Mhm.
And no judgment on anybody or anything at all. It's just my own process. But they are the seeds of the earth. The reason I could find them is because I could hear and feel them. There's just the structure of them all just creates so much energy and coherence. And when I'm coherent, it's just easy. It's there it is, but I've realized that I just want to leave them where they are for now.
I can understand that.
There's
um,
plenty for people
yeah.
to work with in the world right now anyway. So
Well, I don't know if you got when I sent you our Sierra Leone executive summary. I came up with this idea back in the 90s of
Diamonds, all the time.
diamonds are for life, not diamonds are forever. The diamonds are for life.
Yeah.
Everything that's in Sierra Leone, it's a very diamond-rich country, but it's all been, raped, pillaged. Everything's taken out. The only thing that the country makes is the export tax, and
Mm.
they've enslaved all the people to do that. And the whole thing that we're doing is to reverse that, so that the diamonds that are bought from the country, that the money goes back to the people, and we put that into food and housing and education and rebuilding the country. So um, that's part of what we want to do. I mean, we've got many plans. I do have that thing that you do too, about because I've been to so many gem shows. I used to go to Tucson every year, and sometimes I would have that when I saw big crystals. Oh, why did you take that out of the ground for? It's supposed to be there, but there's a monetary price on it, and and now like people are just digging out of the world, at rapid rates. Part of another what we're trying to do is really educate people on what money really is, and that's a really big subject, and create a different system, monetary system, where it's not based on debt and slavery and all those things, but just a medium of exchange, so that everybody has a great life, and it's not about accumulating money or killing your best friend for money or whatever. It's just having a balance, and that's a huge subject for another day, but
Mhm.
just wanted to let you know that.
Hey, I
uh,
tell people, mine the minds inside of your mind, because within are precious gems. I have a whole thing, but that's the gems are inside, you
yeah,
know.
well, actually our cryptocurrency that we're developing is going to be called gems, so you have
Mhm.
gems to trade. Because we're Gemstone University, and it's just a medium of exchange, and it's not actually about accumulating it. And it's about empowering the rest of the people to have a life, and that's it's going outward, not inward.
Look, I love your energy is beautiful. The everything that I read about it, I love it. So I'm super grateful to be connected with you, and
Yeah,
however this goes is perfect. And
yeah. Well, you're a member, because everybody on planet Earth is a member of what we're doing. Because
keep it
we're here for life. We're here for everyone to have a great life. We're here for the planet. We're here to fund all the projects where that enhance life. There's all these people have incredible technologies, things that are just looking for that avenue to come out on. Everything's here. Everything is here to reclaim the land. There's so many experts in so many fields, and yet the human factors kept everybody apart from the solutions. And the solutions are all there, and that's what we've wanted to build, is a living university where people come and learn and cooperate and come together and learn everything together to take it out into the world and recreate that all over the world, and where people are honored for life. It's a very 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 simple equation. It's very simple, and yet it's been the hardest thing to do because of what we've been talking about in the last couple hours. We've been delving deep into the psychology of the human, and and I'm very, very cognizant of the fact that this is what we need to work on. It's the human factor. That's because what you're saying, everything, I know I've been in that future realm somewhere in some time where it all works. And I'm so committed to that. And yeah, it's been a really challenging, challenging situation here. But I know that by us bringing that in, our true potential, our real selves, I know what we are. I know that we can accomplish anything with that infinite endless possibilities of our incredible, endless potential. It's just a matter of getting into it and doing it, finding the people who align with that, and we welcome everybody. The one thing, the one caveat is that you just got to be your great self.
Or want to be, and be
Yeah, want
willing
to
to
be.
keep working through the things that prevent you. Look, the more that individuals can get into this space and sustain it and then come together, the more it's going to make it easier for others who are trying to do this. Because again, as you know so well, coherence entrains incoherence. You just start to exist at a frequency that is so beyond you and everything you've ever been. You embody your future self. You embody the living geometric force of the universe as it is evolving and developing through your being in now, in real time, beyond time. And it's pretty easy to know when you're in that and when you're not. And when you're in it, it doesn't matter how dysfunctional people are. Somebody who's truly in that state is going to have a powerful effect on somebody who's maybe not. And the more that we come together in this state and sustaining it, it's going to have a ripple effect across all the hearts and minds of all the people.
Yep. Well, I know you've got another
Yeah,
call you got to
like
get
for a
on,
call
but
it.
you probably have to pee and eat and all those kind of
Yes, I'm
things
gonna
for
do
the
that.
physical
Ground a little
body.
bit.
But I'm extremely grateful that you spent the time here, and for our members and me and the universe and everybody, all the gems, all the tourmalines in Maine, everything.
And look, if you want me to share, I know you said this is for the members and everything, but if you want me
Yeah,
to share it publicly, I'll
sure.
gladly do that and
Yeah,
tag all the things if you guys want that.
yeah, absolutely.
But up to
Yeah,
you, no problem
yeah,
either way.
yeah,
Well, I look forward to meeting more of your members. I've actually met one already,
yeah, yeah.
and he couldn't say enough good things about you guys. So,
Great, good, good.
all right, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, let's inspire people to be the best they can be and make this world what we know it can be.
Absolutely.
All
I'm
right.
with you 100%.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.